Welcome to the Unlist. Reaching my water down here. Just drinking water, nothing special. Today I'm going to be talking about a perfume house that you probably suspected I would eventually be talking about. It is none other than the House of Anucci. Really strange house. Has a really strange story behind it. Even stranger fragrances. And it's a rabbit hole I've been going down this past month or so, ever since I decided to take the plunge and buy the original Anucci Man, the only fragrance from the brand that anyone really knows anything about. Has a bit of a cult following. You may have seen it. Comes in a golf ball shaped bottle, right? People talk about it being a men's white floral, and it is indeed a white floral fragrance. Although, my humble opinion, it is only a men's fragrance on virtue of the fact that it was marketed to men. Doesn't really smell manly. Doesn't really smell like it was meant to be a man's fragrance. It just happens to be one because that's how it was sold. But you could smell a Nucci Man on a woman and be none the wiser, because it is really just a big, heady, white floral perfume full of stuff like ylang and muguet, and it's got jasmine, big hedione and indole. Okay, it's got both aspects of jasmine, and then it gets funky by having aldehydes, musks, amber, oak moss, patchouli, and a very strange chamomile lavender mixture. Lavender and chamomile together on top of all of these white florals and aldehydes. So that is the thing that makes it unique. It doesn't smell like anything else, but its closest relatives are going to be something like White Diamonds by Elizabeth Taylor, Oscar by Oscar de la Renta. A lot of the Sonia Graugeman fragrances with the Hug Me Accord are going to smell kind of like this, but just the lavender and the chamomile together over top of all these white florals is what makes Anucci Man what it is, effectively. Its signature smell. Now, the brand of Anucci, which I will talk about in just a second, is one of those I have too much money and I need another vanity project kind of brands. So we're talking about a business magnate who comes out of India. Don't know what part of India specifically, but a man named Michael Kemlani, who emigrated to the U.S. in the 70s and was a big proponent of the brand Sergio Valente jeans. Some of you will remember Sergio Valente. I know I do. Popular in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. There is no Sergio Valente. It was just a brand, as it was a thing a lot of investors did back then to break into the fashion industry, make up a fake designer, someone's name that they could put on a label, put on the back of a pair of jeans or on a perfume bottle. People would see it and go, oh, it's Italian or it's French. We have French versions of this phenomenon too. Jean-Louis Vermeer never existed. Jean-Jacques Vivier also never existed. Both had lines of perfumes, right? Just a thing that happened. Well, Anucci is the same. Michael Kemlani decided to launch Anucci in 1987, and it started off as a luxury golf apparel brand. So it had gloves, it had shirts, khaki shorts, sunglasses, baseball caps, all branded with the big Anucci logo, which to the untrained eye looks like a dollar store Gucci logo. There it is, the A. People see this and go, oh, look at that. It's like the kind of thing you would see in a movie, what they call Greeking. You ever heard the term Greeking, where they take a product and they can't show the product in a movie or on a TV show, so they change it to look like something else that's not real. Like they make a fake brand. They call that Greeking. And it looks like someone took the Gucci logo and Greeked it into Anucci, right? But Trust me, it's a real brand. Okay, they made perfumes, and I own several of them now, for better or for worse. So, what makes Anucci so interesting is that you can tell this was a rich guy who clearly wanted to make his own perfumes for himself, with his own very unique tastes, but wanted to sell them to everyone else. It's not really how that works, right? You make a product, it needs to be marketable. You can't just be like, I think this smells great, let's make 1,000,000 bottles of this, and everyone else is going to love it too. So it takes a certain degree of detachment from reality and narcissism to really come at it from that aspect. Sometimes you get lucky and your vision is shared by everyone else in the world. Most of the time, you realize, well, you don't realize if you're narcissistic, but everyone else realizes that you're deluded and you just sprung basically crap onto the world. So, in the case of Anucci, they did have a bit of a meteoric rise and fall. So they did gain popularity through the 90s. Popularity, it's not a word. They gained popularity through the 90s and peaked in the early 2000s. Around the time Michael Kemlani actually retired and gave the brand over to his son, Anup Kemlani, who then continued the Anucci brand until it ran into the ground. But Anucci peaked in the 2000s when they released a bejeweled cell phone. The first cell phone covered in diamonds. It was some Motorola cell phone. Anucci and Motorola collaborated to create this phone. It was like a $150,000 phone or something, but it was just your basic early 2000s flip phone covered in bling. Of course, all of the rappers and celebrities had to have them, right? And that was Anucci's big break, was that phone. Not the perfumes, that phone. Which is the furthest thing from golf that you could possibly think of. Furthest thing from golf. And then they got a sponsorship for the World Cup, which is soccer. Again, not golf. That would happen in 2002. And then they would release a fragrance to coincide with that, which came in a golf ball, but not. It was the ball repurposed to look like a soccer ball. So it was basically a soccer ball version of the golf ball bottle that the original Anucci fragrances came in, with a soccer ball cap. I'll show it to you in a second, okay? We'll get there. Just hold on. And then that repurposed golf ball, but soccer ball looking package with that fragrance inside, that was like their high water mark. And it was just all downhill from there. And they just kind of imploded. They released a couple more fragrances in the early 2020s, like probably an attempt to revive the brand. There was an Anucci Rose and an Anucci Oud. And that was it. That's all she wrote. Most of their older fragrances were flushed out to discounters, which is where I got most of mine from. Discounters and gray market sellers. And that's it. So, and only the original Anucci man from 1989 really gets any attention. All the rest just kind of sit. Low price tags because nobody wants them. And there aren't even like reviews for these fragrances. I think I'm the first person to actually go through and review all these, at least in a long time, right? So now let's talk about let's go through the fragrances one by one. So I've already discussed how Anucci Man smells. Big white floral, Sonia Goldman style, with the lavender and the chamomile. Very dandy, very fabulous. Nothing manly at all about this. But what you may not know is that the same year this came out, it had a twin brother. And here's the twin brother, Anucci Sport. So Anucci Sport has basically the same bottle as Anucci Man, but it says Sport underneath, and it's a darker colored juice, but other than that, it's kind of the same packaging. It's the same basic box, but brown instead of green. The original Anucci Man's a green box. And it kind of smells like your typical ambery oriental fragrance from that period. Nothing sporty about it whatsoever. Like, that's the weirdest thing about this is the sport fragrance, and it just smells even more rich and redolent and sweet, and it's less musky though. The original Anucci Man is muskier than this, but this is more long, spicy, ambery, a bit woody, typical late 80s kind of thing, right? Powerhousey. But yeah, nothing sporty at all. And it just kind of sank without a trace. And the original one is the one that I guess made them some kind of money. After that, the very next year, they would release a his and hers pair of fragrances. This Anucci Wave, and this is the men's, of course. I don't have the women's. But what makes this interesting is that they kind of did this whole tin can packaging before anyone else did. So, Versace would do Versus in a tin can in '92, and then also '94 they would do Blue Jeans in a tin can. Fasanabla would come out in '94 with the tin can. Liz Claiborne with the Curve fragrances in the tin cans. But before any of that, way back in 1990, we had the Wave by Anucci in the tin can. It's a really cool looking, like, cracked kind of finish too. It's actually really deluxe packaging. They don't spare any money on packaging. That's the thing. Love or hate the perfumes, the packaging is always pretty replete, but the bottle's kind of dorky. Looks like a shark fin, or I guess a wave. What's really funny about it is it doesn't say Anucci anywhere on the bottle. Not on the bottom, not on the cap. And it's the only Anucci fragrance I've found that doesn't have an atomizer that screws off. All the rest of them, you can screw off the atomizer. This one's a cheap, like, crimp down job. So I guess they just didn't have the money to do the typical atomizer. So the atomizer is actually not as good on this as it is on all the other ones. Now here's the really fun part. You see this and you think, oh, it's an aquatic, right? It has to be 1990. Okay, it's when aquatics were first kicking in, and it's called Wave, and it comes in this tin can with the beach on it, and it's got the beach and the boats and stuff, and then the wave. It's got to be an aquatic, right? You'd be wrong. This is a citrus aromatic fragrance. This is closer to an Acqua di Selva from 1949, or like a Pinot Silvestri, or something along those lines. It's not quite like a Chypre citrus aromatic. It's not going to be like an Armani Eau pour Homme, unfortunately. I know you guys would love a cheaper alternative for that because that's been discontinued for a while and it's really expensive. This is not that. This is really more like an Acqua di Selva kind of fragrance. Lots of herbs, very herbal, cedarwood, dry tonka, dry citruses, mint, geranium. Like I said, it's very like 1940s, 50s style Italian citrus, which it makes it even more weird that it comes in this this bottle that looks like a shark fin or like a water wave, and it comes in this tin can, and you see this and you're like, okay, this is going to be a beachy fragrance, and no, it's not. It smells like your granddad's aftershave. Go figure. I don't know, man. Looks really cool though, but judging a book by its cover, right? So then we fast forward a little more to 1995, and they would pop out another his and hers pair. This time around, it's Anucci Gold. And what's bizarre about these is they're once again back to the heavy bottle with the brass ring and the atomizer that comes off, the really high quality unscrewable atomizer, all that fun stuff. But they decided not to put his or hers on the his or hers bottles. So the only way you know which one is men's and women's is the color. Black one is the men's bottle. White one is the women's bottle. And the bottle itself looks the same for both. And the juice inside is the same color for both. So if you get some really mean eBay seller who wants to swap the bottles on you and give you the hers in the his box and his in the hers box, who's to say? I think the women's juice may be a bit more lighter and reddish in tone, but it's still a gold color like this, because that's the point. It's Anucci Gold, so it has to look gold. They just completely neglected to put him or her on the bottles. So like I said, hopefully you have an honest seller who puts the his bottle in the his box and doesn't do a presto changeo on you. I haven't smelled the women's. I can't tell you what it smells like anyway. But the men's version, despite this really strange, like, bulb-looking bottle that looks like you could plant it in the ground and it would sprout flowers, this is actually like a cross between Eternity and Cool Water, really. So you get the Cool Water aquatic vibe. So finally, something that's like aquatic, right? But the actual aquatic packaging doesn't have an aquatic in it, and this packaging has something that's more like the coloration. This is the actual aquatic fragrance. Go figure. But violet leaf, like the hydromercinol aquatic notes, lavender, mint. Okay. This has more oak moss than something like Cool Water has. And it has a big dose of linalool, so you get that like huge Eternity vibe in here too. So the combination of like the linalool and the oak moss gives this more of a fougere edge than Cool Water has, so it's a bit of a hybrid. I've smelled another fragrance that's similar to this, and that's an Avon fragrance I own called Triumph for Men. Came out in 1995 as well. I have a suspicion that both this Anucci Gold Man and the Triumph by Avon could be two mods of the same brief, because they smell very similar. This goes a bit more towards the aquatic side, whereas the Avon goes a bit more towards the fougere side. But they're both like hybrids of the style. I like them. It's a nice fragrance. But the funny thing about it is, whereas all the other ones that come in the golf balls don't smell very masculine, that one has a very feminine style bottle, but the perfume is actually, for once, masculine. So it's just, Anucci is all about subverting your expectations. They take the things that you expect and they shit on them. Like a big crow that doesn't give a fuck about your feelings. Just says, okay, you expect this? Well, guess what? Fuck you. That's what Anucci does. And somehow they managed to stay in business as long as they did while doing that. Like I said, can't make this stuff up. Now, in 1999, 10 years after the launch of Anucci Man and its short-lived brother, Anucci Sport, they came out with an anniversary fragrance to celebrate 10 years. And it was called Tea Time. Not like you're drinking tea like this, but tee off golf balls. Tea Time. And this looks like a metal impression of an old style golf bag. You can tell by the little golf clubs. This is a very Avon looking package, right? Avon does kitschy shit like this. But here we have Anucci doing it. But it's a stainless steel bottle. So, stainless steel. So it's good at preserving the juice inside. No light gets in. Hopefully it's not been cooked by heat. You know, good, very good at preserving the fragrance. This came two sort of ways. You could buy this like this, no box, which is why it has the ingredients and the information on the bottom like that, because this was it. You bought this like this. Didn't get a box, didn't get anything else. Just got this with the ingredients and the address right on the thing. Then there was a more deluxe version that came in a box. I think it came with either a tie or a wristband or some kind of other like gift with purchase accessory. And then that version of the fragrance had an atomizer that you could screw into this. But if you bought it like this by itself, you got no atomizer. You just pull the cap off. That's it. That's how you apply the fragrance. And it means you got to unscrew it, and you got to dab it on. A little dab will do ya. So what's really interesting about this is that it's actually not really a unique fragrance. It's a flanker. So this little tea time goofy little guy in this stainless steel thing is actually a flanker of this. The original Anucci Man from 1989. 1999, 10 years have passed. This is kind of like a revision. So if you're familiar with the original Anucci Man, tone down the musk, tone up the oak moss, remove some of the aldehydes, take out some of the softer floral notes in the heart, like reduce the jasmine a bit, reduce the ylang ylang a bit, beef up the muguet, make it a more bitter white floral, a sharper, mossier, more like a 70s white floral than like an 80s. Whereas, like I said, this is like a white diamonds kind of thing. This is more like a Cristal, like a Chanel Cristal kind of a deal, or like a private collection, by, if you smelled that, by Estee Lauder, like a private collection. So this is like just a drier, mossier, sharper kind of interpretation of this. And for some people that might be better. You might prefer that to the musky, sweet. You know, you still get the chamomile though, that's the thing. The chamomile is still in here. The weirdness of the chamomile and the weirdness of the lavender are still present. So you're never going to get around that. But the rest of the fragrance is a bit more old school. Older still, this is already old school, but more older school here. And I don't know. It's cheap. This is actually 125 mil in here. This is like this is actually 4 ounces. So this is a pretty good amount. More than what you get in this even in here. And now, last but not least, I bring you to the end of the road, to the goal by Anucci. So this came out in 2002. This one, this is the newest Anucci fragrance I own. And this is the one I was telling you that has the repurposed golf ball made into like a soccer ball. So it kind of like has a soccer motif with the etched glass, the little pentagon sections there. And just like all the rest though, no different. This has got the atomizer that unscrews. And this came out to celebrate the World Cup sponsorship that Anucci had, like I said. sprung for, paid for, earned, I guess, right? You have to buy into that. You can't be a sponsor unless you're actually sponsoring something. So, paying money towards the World Cup. And they made this fragrance to celebrate it. Apparently, this was pretty successful because this wasn't discontinued until recently. So there's still a lot of this floating around. But even then, I don't know if it was manufactured more than once because all the boxes have 3 ingredient lists like this. So I don't think there is a bottle of this newer than like 2002. I really don't. I just think it took this long for them to finally take it off their website, right? Because they have a website. The only product they currently officially list is the original Anucci Man. All the rest are in discounters or in the gray market. I don't really know. Like I said, information is very nebulous, very hard to come by for this brand. But this fragrance is, oh boy, another strange one. So this time around, you get another big fruity floral fragrance. But instead of being heady and musky and aldehydes and all that stuff, now we're moving more in towards a modern fruity floral. So you're going to get a lot of pear, a lot of green apple. You're going to get black currant, which I'm a fan of. Actually, I like black currant a lot. You get honeysuckle in here. How many men's fragrances can you name, if you can name any? How many men's fragrances can you name that have honeysuckle in them? I'll wait. That's what I thought. So this is probably one of the more unique fragrances in my collection for that reason, because it's a men's honeysuckle fragrance. It's got a bunch of chewy herbs, so it's not. Don't think it's going to be super femmy. It's not. It's got a lot of herbs in it. It's got oak moss. It's got woods. It also kind of reminds me a bit of quartz. So let me show you another fragrance real quick. Unrelated to this one, but related in smell somewhat. Any of you who have smelled this, Quartz Pour Homme by Molyneux, this came out in '94 as well, so this is an older fragrance, but if you've smelled this, if you took this, the vetiver, okay, the apple that's in here, the cedar wood, the black currant, and you made it much more floral and much fruitier. So add the pear, like I said, add the apple. Stuff in that honeysuckle, the jasmine, okay, put all that good stuff in there. Build it into a much more vivacious fragrance, more bombastic, okay? Juicier, even, is another word you could use. You would transform this into this. And it's another one that I think women could wear perfectly fine. It doesn't feel super masculine, but it feels maybe more masculine than the original Anucci Man does. Don't know. But it's another one of those that I just can't explain. Got no explaining for you. Yeah, Gold by Anucci. More. They have this thing where they like to use these weird fonts. All of their freaking bottles have weird, like that's a weird font, right? Super weird. The tea time I showed you had Gothic letters on it. Got literal Gothic letters on it. So they just, I don't know, whoever was doing their graphic arts was living his best life. The graphic artist at Anucci in the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, living his absolute best life. Just like, you know what? Gothic letters on this. Why? Because fuck you, that's why. We want Gothic letters, we get Gothic letters. And you just gotta deal with it. And it's the same thing with this. These weird, just like elliptical letters that don't suggest soccer in any way, shape, or form. looks more like some kind of like Star Trek advanced alien script sort of thing, text. But it's what they're using, so it's what you're getting. Okay, that's just how it is. I don't make the rules. I just abide by them. To summarize, this is a brand that lived and died by the whims of its owners, who, from what I can tell, are a very rich family. There's probably some nepotism in there, I'm sure. And they just put out these perfumes because it's what they like, it's what they want to do. They have no business strategy. They have no care in the world for whether there's an audience, because there really wasn't an audience for any of these. Okay, there really wasn't. There was not an audience for these perfumes. And they just throw them out there, caution of the wind. If people like them, they like them. If they don't, then who cares? They've got tons of money. They have irons in other fires. They make money other ways. They're not worried about it. Okay, it's like the epitome of a vanity project, you know? It is. It's, I want to release perfume into the world because I have ideas. And I know what's best. And that's it. So either you like it, or it sits in discounters for literally 35 years, which it clearly did, until some jackass like me comes around and buys them all and then makes a video about it that you suckers are stuck watching for 30 minutes. Okay, it's just, the shit just rolls downhill, doesn't it? It's just the way it works. So, alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed that video on Anucci. Hopefully I inspired you to go check out some weird, kooky fragrances. They don't cost a ton of money, so if you buy it and you don't like it that much, It's been the Unlist. Catch you next.